Welcome to this call. This is our fifth part in the Interdependence series that Rachel and I are co-hosting the conversations of. And we are focusing on cultivating the community mind today. So really moving away from hyper individualism. And we're going to find our way as we do in this hour and a half, and excited to have your questions and curiosities and comments and experiences really feed where we go. And just knowing that, you know, or maybe it's not known, but I want to say that Rachel and I really come to this as apprentices to it all, to community being a teacher of ours, and really this learning ground that keeps growing us up and helping us expand the realm of possibility of what's possible in culture, what's possible in a group of people together, what's possible now that seeds the future, that's related to the past, but like in this recipe of where we are today, pulling on the past, but also looking at where what's emerging. And so not really thinking that it's fixed, really living in this organic living organism as a like a language to use for this way, that this life way. That's what I'd call it for me, a life way and a practice. So with that, I just want to say again, welcome, and thank you, Rachel, for joining me. And do you want to offer any opening words before we dive in?
I'm actually resisting a sneeze at the moment. um, mm. No, just welcome and thanks for joining us. And I echo NikiAnne's words that, like, yeah, community life has been one of my greatest teachers and has given me so much grist for the personal growth mill.
Mm-hmm. Well, we got to check in a little bit before we jumped on the call with you, and I was really touched and moved by this relationship that you were speaking of, Rachel, between trust and interdependence. And I'm kind of curious if you want to elaborate on that relationship for you, or how you see it being like a teacher. And we can kind of spin this throughout because it's kind of a thread that moves us through, but just like if there's a entry point for that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so there is this tenet of emergent strategy that comes from Adrienne Marie Brown, and it's that change moves at the speed of trust. And I heard that many years ago, maybe in the year or two before moving to Earthaven. And so interesting, like in community life, I'm getting to see that play out in real time, and the richness of that. And how, like, trust is such an essential part of the interdependence piece, and how, like, it's trust built over time, trust built through conflict, trust built through adversity, and not just shared positive experiences. And that when we go through difficult and challenging things together, that when we move through them well, and with repair and connection strategies, that we actually come out with like a deeper level of trust than we had before the rupture, right? And that is where change and transformation happens. And that can happen at scale, right? Between two people, between a small group or a large group of people. And I frequently think about that at the community level because, we're all coming together here at like different innate sort of levels of trust, depending on what our life experiences have been, and in different places in the process of like doing the work and learning the skills around communication and connection and repair and trust building. So it's like this really sort of mycelial, I think, experience because it has a lot of layers and arms and sort of moving, growing pieces to it in a larger group of people. I mean, and here, I mean, we're making decisions with almost 60 people, I think, and having conversations with a larger group, and all together, if we include our children, and we're frequently more and more inclusive our children in the community conversation, like 125 people. And like, yeah, like I think that's a really grand experiment in trust building, when we are coming from a culture that is so deeply disconnected, where we have abusive relationships with institutions, you know, sort of gaslighting, mentally manipulative relationships sometimes, and like really low levels of trust as the conditions for this experiment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you two things that really ping for me. One, you mentioned like, oh, we make decisions with 60 people, and that's true. And I just want to like unpack that a little bit of like for our group decision making moments, the issues that require the whole, that's what you're referring to. And then I also think of these nested zones of autonomy
Mm-hmm.
and jurisdiction we have within that. That's like, for me, like I dressed myself today, I'm pretty proud of it. My husband had nothing to say about it. You know, like if we paint a wall in our house, I'd probably consult him. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if we're gonna put a play set up in our neighborhood, we'd consult the whole neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
um, if we're gonna take a member in to our neighborhood, you know, to have them co-own with us, that's a neighborhood decision. A member of the whole community is one of those issues that's of the large group. So just I want to name that because I think one of those fears is often like, oh my gosh, I have to do everything with everyone all the time. Like my trust issues go so high so fast. And
Yeah.
not only just trust issues, but exhaustion capacity. So
Well,
yeah.
and with the nested models or zones of autonomy, like those are also like nested zones of trust building too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like different playgrounds for practicing that. And so, and like those, the realms, there's like the personal and the interpersonal and the communal realms, right? And those are three different zones of intimacy and responsibility and trust building spaces. So, yeah, we have some setups here, like you mentioned. Like, no, we're not making every decision with 60 people. We would probably never make a decision, you know. And we get to practice. Like, yeah, it is easier to build trust with like 5 to 15 people in a neighborhood and make decisions together and form some sort of like cooperative and cohesive culture among that group of people. And it's from that place that you then get to move to the larger group and practice those skills, right?
Mm-hmm. I want to bring in a perspective from a teacher of mine named Sabanfu Somé. She's from Burkina Faso, West Africa, from the Dagara people. And she, this question she poses of like, what is community? And so I'm going to read a passage from one of her books. She says, to better understand the term community, it may be easier to begin by explaining what community is not. Community is not a place where you can stay without having a sense of who is around you, nor is it an item on the market for sale. Rather, a community is an environment where you can find a home in each other's hearts and souls. It is a living entity with spirit as its anchor, where a group of people are empowered by one another, by spirit, and by the ancestors to be themselves, carry out their purpose, and use their power responsibly. Without all these elements, community suffers from power struggles, irresponsibility, and lack of accountability. The goal of community is to form a diverse body of people with common goals and empower them to embrace their own gifts, selves, and nature. Community holds a space for all of its members to work at becoming as close to their true selves as possible. Whew, that's like a whole, you know, semester of a class to like just get into the depth of each part that she's speaking to. You know, and not all these parts might speak to everyone, or people might have different words for what she's choosing to name or call out. But that line about community suffers from power struggles, irresponsibility, and lack of accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, that's like touching on the difficulty of cultivating the community mind. or the community body,
Yep.
that ruptures happen and just take the community that was attempting to form and dismember it. And so that's what I think a lot of people keep showing up to Earthaven just because of its longevity of like, well, what are you all doing that you're still alive 30 years later? And I'm still in curious study about that here too, like trying to hear about what happened at the beginning and what's evolved through time to keep its relevance and evolution with those who come, and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater every time like a whole new crop of people come, and it has the power and momentum to change what has been, and that's been a hazard at times. And one of the things that I hear as a celebration and as a complaint and maybe as a threat to people who check out Earthaven is it's so much structure, it's so much form, it's so much overhead, it's so much organization. And it's true, like I think we hazard on like to a fault or like over cumbersome, and it's been part of I think the lifeline to hold some weightedness and matter and stability, to not be swinging so much in formation times. So yes, we need to make sure we don't become too sedentary and solidified, but I think that those structures and forms that got and processes that got put in place early on saved the life of the village, because it wasn't falling prey to the habits that we're coming from, that we as well intended as we are to be doing different, we're bringing our suitcase full of our baggage, all of our habits. And yeah, so anyway, and there's one line that Adam Alpert has said. He's a great teacher and community member out at Sewing Circle at Occidental Arts and Ecology Center in California. And he said, the more process, the less processing. And I was like, that's so simple. I can remember that one. And so that's kind of speaking to that, supporting the community mind to form and have something tangible to operate from as a center.
Yeah, I think that was part of the wisdom of our founders and something that I'm really grateful for. Like they did have the wherewithal to recognize that they were coming out of this hyper individualistic culture, and they really did strongly hold the vision of a community mind. And depending on who you talk to, like they held it in different ways, and maybe they fell into the trap that a lot of us fall into sometimes of like romanticizing indigenous cultures or intact cultures or whatever. But they did set a form that also spoke to who they were, and I think who Earthaven tends to attract, and that is highly individualistic, creative, strong personality, like firebrand sort of people, right? And you need form and structure to ground that and keep us from pulling ourselves apart in our like excitement and charisma and enthusiasm for all the things that we want to do. So I think like, yeah, the form and structure has to answer the personality characteristics of the humans, and they were all very like strong personalities. And so there was really some wisdom and I think humility in that. Maybe on some level they were like, we need some rules because you were going to go off the rails.
And people will often say, well, like, who's the leader here? Or do you have a guru? And I just laugh. I'm like, this is a herd of cats. Like, there's no way you can herd these cats. Like it's fruitless effort and probably to no avail.
We're like all gurus here. We're all teachers for each other, and we're all the students too, right? Yeah, I mean, that is one of the things that has amazed me about this place is really what is holding us together. Yeah, we don't have a guru. We don't have any common spiritual practice. Our community was founded on like permaculture principles, right? And we can definitely stretch those into the non-physical realm. But really, I mean, we have these 13, we have our value framework, right? Our
Mhm.
13 goals, that all of our decision making and all of our actions are filtered through these 13 agreed upon goals or values. And that seems amazingly loose in some ways, especially because these 13 values are very broad and lofty, right? They're not strategies, they're not direct actions, they are values. Um, yeah, and I guess I'm in this moment, I'm kind of like struck by the beauty of that, that they're a stronger container than maybe I've thought they are, but it
Mhm.
allows us a lot of freedom and creativity in um, the strategies that we choose to enact those goals on the individual level, the neighborhood level, and the communal level.
Mhm. Yeah, and you're playing with you're painting a picture that's going between like form and accountability and like freedom and low rigidity. And
Mhm.
so I want to keep unpacking that a little bit, and I want to link it to Ken's question of what happens when someone violates the rules and refuses to comply. Um, so in general, there's very little rules,
Mhm.
like actionable, not actionable, that there's a lot of actionable. Um, like we use this language of is so and so a member in good standing,
Mhm.
and it's like in good standing because literally for the HOA, it's like, did you pay your dues and fees?
Mhm.
As far as I understand,
I
um,
don't think we're even using that anymore.
and probably because it's like we. So
We
yeah,
don't have a definition of what good standing means at this point. Yeah.
so I guess to say like really social pressure is the hugest mechanism for accountability.
Mhm. Yeah.
And we do not live outside of the government, local, federal, state. And so if push comes to shove and we really can't maintain safety, or that there's as someone's out of compliance with something that is within the bounds of a law outside of ourselves, that's that legal
Mhm.
authorities can be brought in. It's very rare, and it's been needed and really it's when we humble ourselves of this is too big for us, this is beyond our capacity and jurisdiction.
Mhm.
What rights do I have as a landlord? What rights do we have as an HOA? And so that's kind of where it's come into to really needing to use outside forces. Otherwise, social
Mhm.
pressure is the thing. Like, hey, you know, friend, like, come on, like this thing, whether it's paying something or showing up for a mediation.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think like those circumstances you mentioned and relying on the outside structures is kind of the exception to the rule that we will do it if we need to, right? If that's what it comes to, if something's too big for us. But it's like so rare that we go there. But you mentioned like mediations, like we have this covenant and these agreements. And I want to make that distinction too in our culture and our language. Like we do not live or we're not building or trying to live in a reward and punishment system here, right? And so we use the language of agreements. And how do agreements come to be? Like we co-create them together, right? So if you are in co-creation of an agreement, then you have some buy-in to that thing, and on some level, it likely reflects your values. Um, I think we also have a high level of tolerance for differing opinions and communication strategies, right? And then, yeah, like you said, the social pressure. Like, I have always wondered this too, because I don't have a lot of experience with other communities. I have not lived in other communities, but I have engaged in conversation with folks and live in other communities, and there were common threads about this, like what happens when people don't follow the rules, and I'm like, but like, do not they not care about their relationships? Like that's what always comes up for me. And I'm asking the question, I was like, oh, what have we done that we have all like cultivated um such care for each other? That social pressure works here most often. That it's the anomaly, that the social pressure isn't enough. I'm wondering
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts about that, NikiAnne.
I mean, yeah, I actually want to go to the membership covenant that you're referring to. And just
Yeah.
so, this is back to that initial thing I said, that we have really honed in and developed dynamic processes and structures and tools to like assist in these processes. And so, as Rachel mentioned, we have the mission, vision, goals, and then even within those 13 goals, there's like 40-ish enabling actions. So more granular, actionable steps of those goals. So trying to help us even more. What do we mean by that? What are some examples of that? And so kind of how like maybe, I mean, as a parallel to, because I know we're using this language for membership covenant, a parallel might be like you take a job and you're signing um, the employee manual or like a code of ethic. And you're like, I agree that I've read this and I will abide by it. So like in that vein of like acknowledgement that the thing exists, you've internalized that, you've taken responsibility for reading it, and then you're committing to it, whatever that means. We've really worked with like having this ritualistic like acknowledgement of that at each stage in a journey here. And so I'm going to read it, a couple lines from this. So when you first arrive, we call you a short-term new root. You're a new root and you've been here for less than a year. And so that short-term new root would sign the section that's for them upon arrival that says, I've read Earthaven's mission, vision, goals, and enabling actions. And I'm aware that I'll be expected to engage in a reflective feedback process after a year if I'm still here, and I will endeavor to understand and honor this mission, vision, goals, and enabling actions with a particular focus towards assessing if and how these principles and actions fit into my life. A year later, when someone becomes a long-term new root, the actionable step is, I've reread all that and I intend to deepen my understanding of and the practice of these principles and values. If someone wants to go even deeper and become a provisional member, at that threshold, they're reaffirming that they've reread it. And not only are they intending to deepen, but they support these principles, values, and behaviors and commit to further deepening their exploration of them and actions of them. And then the final stage that we have so far, at least, is this full membership stage. So we ask, and this is in council, in front of people, like I reaffirm that I've reread these, I support them, and I commit to the ever unfolding process of learning to embody and live them here at Earthaven. So it's like a graduation of the actionable, of what the action is being requested of someone. So it's trying to really be appropriate to an age and stage of the relationship with Earthaven. So even in having that repetition is like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Instead of being like, gosh, I don't even know what that was 8 years ago or 2 years ago that I signed or read. And like, so that's just a way to like proactively and preventatively like have a buy-in, have someone really claim I'm in these ways. And if they push back on any of that, then it's a discussion and then it's a learning of each other, and maybe it shapes the course of the tool. And maybe it's a reflection that like, wow, this isn't a fit if I'm going to push against this, and it's just like a no. So that's just one of those technologies that we're using and engaging in.
Yeah, and that I want to note that I put our goals in the chat, and it might be too much for people to digest in this moment, but you can go to our website and you can look at them, so you know what these goals and shared values are that we're talking about. Like, what kind of thing are they? But I was wanting to address something that you were speaking to, and it serves as a filter, right? That you spoke to, like the buy-in of it and what happens, but it's like one of the many filters where we have um, these choice points in the community journey with people who have come to live here. And so it's like we're asking you to like intentionally choose this thing. This is what we're about here. And we, like if you're choosing in, like great. And not that that's static either, right? Because what we all bring to the table causes the thing to grow and evolve. So I think that's also why it's like less rules and more agreements, because those agreements can shift with time and circumstance and population. But like you were saying before, enough form and function that they're not reactive pendulum swings. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm seeing Brian's comment here. I'm just going to read it for those who it's not easy to look at a screen. But speaking about a situation in a different community, one of the biggest problems is the people are buying a house, they move there, and then they don't really participate in the life of the community, or they do it first, but then decide not to be involved, but they don't move away. And we don't have any means to enforce participation. So they just live here, and it's like a nice neighborhood. There's a pushback by some members against requiring anyone moving here to sign any agreement to participate. I'm going to share these goals. Yeah, you have a very classic problem, and one that that exists here too. And I'm happy to share about it, but my thoughts on that. But Rachel, do you have anything that's pinging for you
Oh,
about reality
sure.
and how to address it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was just nodding my head to everything you were saying in the question. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a minority issue for us here. It definitely can and does happen. But the majority of people, like, that's the purpose in a membership process, I think. And the membership process is like giving those choice points, and we're all getting to know each other. And the way our community is set up ideally is that someone goes through the membership process before they buy property. So we have this courtship process where we get to know one another, and it's going to be a year minimum. I don't think it can be any faster than that. But it's often maybe more like 2 years. And so we get to have a lot of experience with people, and we all get to choose how we feel about living together and make an informed and consenting decision about it. And then the property, the physical financial buy-in happens. Yeah, I can imagine it being like, I just feel a lot of empathy for those of you who are, wanting more intentionality and participation in your community, and people being able to buy in and then not showing up for that. And so I have empathy for you all and the pain for that community process. And then I'm like, well, of course that happens. And that's maybe why we have so much form and structure, and how it's helpful for us, because we just grew up in these siloed nuclear families, individualistic situations. And even here in this community, like, I think we all have to like push up against that. We're all drawn to it. It's what feels normal. It's sort of our default. And learning how to live in community and be social and relational on that level, like, is a practice and a learning curve for all of us. And so I think that it might be one of the things that I would say to people, like starting communities. It's like, yeah, it might sound like a lot of rules or agreements or whatever, or a lot of process, or you just want to give everybody an opportunity, or, but that it depends on what you want your end outcome to be. And if we're willing to put up the guardrails, as NikiAnne says, or put up the training wheels on the bike for just like remembering and relearning how to live in community and not be individuals.
Yeah. And I think so much of it's interesting to hear and know that there's so many common classic shared realities of challenges in community. So that's interesting, even despite the fact that there's a lot of different models. So there's something that's just like, universal, at least where we are as humans in this evolution. And I think there are just some differences because of the models that it's hard to transfer strategies and assume that the success will be just as similar with the different models. And so I know that there's quite a bit of communities throughout the country and probably world that it doesn't require a membership process to buy in, or it's a very thin, simple membership process that upon entering, it's the honeymoon stage with the rose-colored glasses. And so it's just like not an easy, there's not a lot of access to the depth of what it will be like later. And so it is. And so it's just probably more of a gamble. And so it's really with us having a membership process and us only being able, no, that's not true. Ideally, we're only selling to members who have gone through the membership process. And that, yeah, with that being the case for us, like it's really our job to make sure anyone approaching Earthaven knows at the heart of this community is service. It's a volunteer community service project. And that comes with what we call a requirement. And there's benchmarks at a lot of the way through. So when someone first arrives, it's 16 hours a month, 4 hours a week of service. After a year, it's 12 hours. It's kind of acknowledging like, okay, you've gotten oriented. Hopefully you've made some relationships. We're trusting that it's naturally more flourishing and you have more of a way to build an organic life. And so it's asking less of the community to put into the community because you might be tending your neighborhood more in your home. And then it kind of switches like the way in which hours are calculated when you become a full member. And as it is right now, you have a lifetime membership requirement, basically 1,500 hours within 10 years is the ask and the expectation. And so that kind of like is saying like, hey, still stay with a rhythm, like still stay engaged. And, now people have been here so long, we're dealing with like, well, now what? After people have fulfilled their lifetime membership requirement and they don't need to anymore. And I think that the idea of that service requirement is the training wheel concept. It's to say, let's help us habituate to a different way of living because our whole life, likely for a lot of us, and all the water we swam in has been orienting us towards something else. And so it's interesting though, because it's even up in the community right now for folks who are showing up who have a lot of really strong work ethic. They're like, this is feeling extractive to me. It's like zapping my joy. So that's one perspective of because it's a requirement and it has to be in this way. And then, one of our founders is like, yeah, I still don't trust us. We're lazy and selfish he might say by nature, but like what I interpret it as like, that's just the conditioning that some people are coming with. And so how to be in service to the we and that thing greater than ourselves, this is a strategy for that. And it has its trip hazards and its unintended consequences and its different effects on folks. It just doesn't like really bothersome because it's like, I'm going to do this anyway. Great. Sure. I just turn in my community service hours and no big deal. It's like my life. This is what I want to be doing. So, yeah, I think that's somewhat related to trying to answer that question that you had, Brian. And I think the last thing I'll say is this saying from an elder in my life has been so orienting and like understandable of why that I'm about to say, which is the greater the need, the greater the result. And it's so true. The hurricane happened, everyone showed up with joy and threw down more than they've had in the whole year, possibly. There was a high need. And so that's a question that I think communities can look at. How do you either maintain a high need of something? Like ours is high need maintenance right now. Like we're not in a development phase necessarily. And then like communicate that, like help people get connected with the need. Otherwise, we're really patterned to fall back into our addiction to convenience and comfort. And so that's the tension in our habits of disconnection. So, how can a community get clear? What are our needs? And really like believe it. I mean, it's like a parent to a child. You must clean up your room. Otherwise, blah, 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 the world will end. And the child's like, no, it won't. Like, that's just not true. Like, it's so like the result of this clean room, because of that being the logic, is like just not creating the like impetus. Whereas like, do not cross that road on this busy road we live in without looking both ways. It's like, yeah, I got it. Like, this is actually a high need for my life.
Yeah, I love how you wove the intention towards community service into part of that, the glue of participation and our clarity around that. And I just want to name that the outcome of those training wheels is, and beyond the lifetime requirements, why the lifetime requirement is a question we're asking now is because people are still contributing. The contribution doesn't stop. Like we've been trained. We have found the joy of contribution. We have found our niche, which creates a different set of problems, actually. Yeah, I think also something that is embedded in our culture and that we commit to really clearly, that's a part of the glue, is the commitment to conflict resolution and tending our relationships. I don't think it's in the membership covenant, but it's in something that we sign at some point in time. I'm trying to recall like what it is in this moment, but yeah, it's a part of our community culture and a requirement of our community culture. And so we do like there are some classes, some education that we provide for people who are prospective members here, as we call on the membership track. And nonviolent communication is one of those things. And I know for me, nonviolent communication was really instrumental in breaking down some structures in my mind around how I perceived others and how I presented myself. And definitely helped me like expand my empathy and understanding and tolerance and recognizing needs in myself and others. And what happens internally gets like mirrored in the external world. So the more I honor my needs, the more I can honor others. Learning what names for feelings actually are, that's like really important in communication. And lends itself to part of the glue of community here. Like not only are we like offering people those skills and we're making them part of our social fabric, but we are actually agreeing to like not let these things go untended, because we're all kind of naturally conflict averse. We kind of live in that culture, right? And I think maybe, yeah, like that you get, again, the default of retreating into our siloed nuclear homes and the lack of participation. If we come up in rub up against an uncomfortable place. Like if there's nothing in the agreements that we've made and the buy-in and the reason that we're there is going to cause us to push through that, then we're naturally going to like retreat back into our own personal space.
Mm-hmm. That leads me to actually want to read another passage. This one's from Wendell Berry on community. He's an author. I'm sure many of you know him. A community is the mental and spiritual condition of knowing that the place is shared and that the people who share the place define and limit the possibilities of each other's lives. It is the knowledge that people have of each other, their concern for each other, their trust in each other, and the freedom with which they come and go among themselves.
Mm. Can you repeat a part of that for me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was, I think it was about the define or limit. It was that phrase. Can I hear that one again?
A community is the mental and spiritual condition of knowing that the place is shared and that the people who share the place define and limit the possibilities of each other's lives. Mm-hmm. It is the knowledge that people have of each other, their concern of each other, their trust in each other, and the freedom with which they come and go among themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the word limit is really like a hook for me in that I think we often steer away from, like in our modern privileged life of addiction to convenience and mobility and limitlessness and progress and a sense of our power that we sometimes have unchecked. And I think it's often one of the reasons why people don't actually choose community is it feels too limiting. It feels intrusive and limiting. And it is those things. And I think that's been like a really like a joy journey for me to be like finding the peace in that, finding the gift in that, similar to a child being gifted boundaries. Like the gift to a child with boundaries is that they will know self-restraint as an adult. Mm-hmm. And it's similar in this, I mean, you use the term the refiner's fire. It's taking a certain set of choices away or ease of choices away that sometimes can scare us or that we're not used to, but such as the choice of selling to whoever we want when we want and getting out, leaving, cutting cords and having no slowness in that process, no encumbrances, that we can like bring whoever we want forever here and have no one ask any questions about it. Like that's also not kosher. It's like, yeah, you can have a guest here for a bit. Otherwise they need to like go through a residential process just like everyone else. So there's these encumbrances have created for me more awareness of others. Oh, like moving away from hyper-individualism, like understanding that we have impact, not feeling so lost in the endless choices of life, being like, oh, these are my choices, great, like feeling peace in that. That's like the opposite of that feeling when you're going to look for something in the world and you're like, go on the internet and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many options. Like that's kind of that's like the contrast to what I'm talking about. So that limitedness that we limit each other is like we can talk about that for a long time and what that could mean to us. But yeah, for me, it's not actually making any of us smaller. It's actually
Mm.
just like taking up appropriate space and consumption of resources. And yeah, again, all that kind of like arrive at just like more of a peace for me. How about for you? It seems like that
Oh
word
yeah,
hooked
I
you
am
too.
nodding my head. I'm like amening over here. This is one of my favorite topics. I feel like I've become radicalized around this particular topic. Yeah, I love a good boundary. And I have a personality that I would compare to the element of water, right? And water can be beautiful and serene. Water can like be cleansing and flow smoothly, and water can be like super destructive. And it needs like form and function and structure and boundaries, right? Or it's just like, then everything's water if you don't. Yeah. And like I used to be a person, I was like very rebellious, and I was like, you can't tell me what to do. And this journey that's happened to me is so delightful. Like you said, I found my joy in that journey or something like that. And I love the joy of limitation of choices. Um, I don't know how many other people in my generation, I'm like 44 years old, and like growing up, it's like you could be anything you want to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to tell kids that they can't be what they want to be, but like it's also a little misleading. It also creates some false expectations. And it's kind of the sense of like it goes beyond what you want to be, right? That attitude or that mentality that you can have anything, you can do anything. Um, and our limitless options. And I think it's all a little overwhelming and we lose our moral compass in
Mhm.
the limitless options. And a moral compass is to be found in the intentional choice of narrowing the options. Um, yeah, I don't want to just like go on a monologue forever because I love this topic so much. But yeah, it also, I have found joy and ease in the journey. And this is from like a highly individualistic person who frequently thinks they have the answer to everything and has a history of intense individualism and rebelliousness. But I think it's like a
Mhm.
more appropriate scale for our human brains and hearts to have fewer choices than what globalism and the internet and all of that is offering us right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and you just helped me to see something that when you just said, talking about your nature of um, rebelliousness, whatever. Am I saying the word correctly? That I find it fascinating that I feel like I have seen a commonality, maybe it's a pattern of people who identify as misfits and rebels in the world they grew up in, ending up in community.
Mm-hmm.
At least they've arrived at sometimes at Earthaven, and I see
Mm-hmm.
them in other community affinity groups. And for some, they they see the essence of difference and the value differences such that they don't perpetuate the rebelliousness. They're like, oh, that was for a reason and a good cause. And like it was a necessary thing to something that's unchecked in our world,
Yep.
or out of balance or unhealthy. And that's not playing out because they're not identifying with that in this community setting. And then I see others who that's becomes a rote pattern and they can't grow out of it. And they come here or to other communities and they, you know, feel like they're doing their duty of kind of being the bull in the china shop. Um, and they're, blowing the whistle when it's a miss sometimes. It's actually not a deep read of what's going on. And one of the ways that I can see that be spun here in a way that helps us to get out of that, if we are playing that out, is, I think Paul, one of our founders, gave me this language, but I've heard it other ways from other people, is this experiment, the community itself is the child. We're the parents to it. So then it flips the paradigm on its head that the community is doing something to keep you down. It's the parent and you're the child. And so it doesn't play out that like childhood wounding.
Yeah.
If we can take that in, try to, adjust accordingly and reframe and reorient to the world that we're living in. And so that feels huge. That feels pretty radical, actually. And not everyone is able to even explore that, if it is a fit.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've rubbed up against that in myself sometimes. And I think I'm definitely like, you know, leaning into the edge of maturing around that, right? But yeah, there are definitely times that I have to check myself and my resistance and like where it's really coming from and if it's actually serving. And
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, and I think also it's not ever having lived in a place where you have so much fucking freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I have more freedom to be myself here and whatever iteration or incarnation of that person I want to be today than I ever have anywhere in my entire life with any group of people. And like I am
Mm-hmm.
showing up for that, right? I am showing up to be a more and more authentic version of myself. And I am living among other people who are showing up for that. And we're showing up for each other in the like allowing that. And so really, it's like I think it's like it's the residual fear, it's the echoes of fear, it's the
Mm-hmm.
the traumas of all these past like rigid rule abiding structures that we've lived in, and then we come here and we just can't even fathom that these rules aren't rules, that like we're consenting to things, and that the level of personal freedom and personal responsibility is the other side of that coin, is really
Mm-hmm.
unprecedented. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, in
Yeah, and
of people that are dedicated to shared values, right?
and I mean, I don't know if you experience it that you're supported to be your fullest self when you said you have the freedom to. Is it? I think in that one could assume that it's just like a neutral, natural, inherent experience. And my speculation is it's not. It's actually in relationship of being uplifted and reflected back to and supported to be.
Yeah, thanks for picking up on that and unpacking it a little bit. I think I was trying to say that when I was speaking to the like I'm showing up for that and others are showing up for that and for each other. But yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
am supported in it. I'm supported in my personal growth. My personal growth benefits all of us. I am supported, like in that quote from Sabanfu, of
Mm-hmm.
bringing my gifts to community. I've had
Mm-hmm.
people who have drawn those gifts out of me a little bit. Like they saw
Mm-hmm.
things in me I didn't even see in myself. Um, yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
I guess I have like a grief. I have a mourning right now for that, like fear of having your personal freedom restricted by living
Mm-hmm.
in community. Um, it's really rare that I'm like, I just really want to do whatever I want to do, and I can't do that here. Like I don't know if it's come up in recent years since some major shifts have happened in me. And this journey takes time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of the trust building, I think. Mm.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that has been empowering for me to um like feel the bigness of such a small situation, meaning like there's 100 and less than 150 people here, it's pretty small, like um is that the way it was said that has to do with our self-governance process is like all these huge problems exist in the world, corruption, extortion, um, all kinds of bigotry and unfair practices, what, you could name it, warmongering, blah, 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 capitalism, blah, 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 unchecked,
Mhm.
consumerism.
Mhm.
And it feels hard to oftentimes, I'm hearing us touch our despair of it's hard to touch the solutions of those problems. And that's what's a higher possibility here in this community, and I would imagine other communities, is those problems can still exist, but you can touch those problems in your community, and you can also touch the solutions. And so for us, I mean, you know, my husband's like king of being like, make a proposal, take it to council. You can change it if you get the buy-in from the others. And if you don't, then like you don't have enough shared reality. You know, so it's like there's so much possibility of change that I think most people don't feel in the greater world. And so that's a way to come back to our power, and it's in a shared capacity.
Mm-hmm. And I just can't, I don't think we can underestimate like the healing power of that. Like you're speaking to like true empowerment, the ability to affect change in your environment by your participation. And I think we, like I mentioned earlier, the abusive power structures in our society and our broken relationship with institutions. And a lot of people come here not recognizing that level of empowerment. And I think it's one of the stumbling blocks for folks in the beginning is they don't recognize, even before being a member, by your engagement and your participation, you can affect change. And like, I mean, I feel like that's something that took me a long time to really fully internalize. And even now, it's not the first thought I have sometimes, you know, like you said, my husband is make a proposal, you know, I'm like, I need someone to say that to me when I'm just like spinning in my wheels of frustration about something, you know, like you can just make a proposal and see if other people want to change it too. Yeah, but that again, like the healing power and the preciousness of actually being able to affect change in a group of people that you live with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you've got questions, please feel free to share them in the chat. I love people sharing comments and questions throughout, and just wanting to keep mentioning that that's still open. And I think in this moment, I feel called to maybe give some examples of some of the experiments happening of shared life and shared resources that isn't necessarily through the Earthaven community associations. So they're happening in smaller experiments. Usually someone will just bring this idea and who wants to join and who wants to do this thing. So they're like affinity groups for a purpose. And sometimes they're really loosely organized, and sometimes they're, you know, there's like a courtship process or vetting process or a request process to join something. So there, I want to give them some airtime because they're the bite-sized practice grounds that Rachel was talking about for trust building at a pace that can work, you know, moving at the speed of trust. And sometimes that has to do with who those individuals are and how you relate. And so it's not just like the concept itself, it's like that constellation of folks that's practicing that. That makes or breaks it, or really makes it easy, or, you know, maybe harder for someone. But one of them is a mutual aid society. So I just want to give a shout out to Cooperate WNC, Western North Carolina. It is headquartered here at Earthaven and led by one of our community members, Zeb Friedman, who's just super committed to mutual aid, regional mutual aid, and how to restart community groups, societies regionally. And that organization supports that happening wherever someone is. And one of the opportunities within that has birthed here is a savings loan pool. And so a group of people have come together, and they are that group, that closed group who, you know, people can get into, but they put their money into the pool and then they loan each other money. And that's, so if you want a loan, then you join. And there's a lot to say about that. It's super cool. And I think, yeah, just keep watching out for when that's a possibility to learn more about that. But I just want to put a pin in that one. And also micro lending happens, personal loans. So there's kind of just these like this money that just gets circulated around for people buying houses. And, you know, even I took out a loan from a community member to start soil 11 years ago. Like we didn't have money for the marketing to get that up and running. And so we took a 5-year loan out from a community member. And so that happens quite often.
Mhm.
Um,
That's how I bought my house.
yeah, cool.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's low interest, sometimes it's zero interest, like it's whatever the terms are that those people come up with. There's a car co-op that there's a group of people who have this like fleet of cars that they like rent from each other. And I don't know all the details, but somehow they've got insurance covered and they have a system of, booking those cars. And so just really maximizing the usage while minimizing the cost of a pretty expensive asset that people have to maintain usually on their own or in their family system. Um, and Rachel's mentioned before agricultural groups. There's groups who do chickens and turkeys together and pigs for a season together or vegetable farming together. And those are great ways to be social and get to know each other while being in service and producing food from the land. And yeah, I think I want to, some of you have probably heard us reference Courtney Brooke, a sister friend of ours who you probably know from our YouTube channel. She's done a lot of videos, and I really am thankful for this soundbite she gave me, this linguistic handle to a perspective that I don't know where it came from, and maybe you do, it and you've heard it, but she was our outreach coordinator, so she would receive a lot of the calls of people interested in community, and people would ask questions like, how many cars are in your community, how much food do you produce, how self-sustaining are you, how many solar panels in your community. There's answers to those questions. They might be fine questions given the context of something, but she would try to help someone see that, like, I'm pointing to the moon and you're looking at my finger. You're talking about my finger. You're missing that the moon's out there. And she'd try to help like expand the depth of their questions and their interest to like not miss this like gold or this like amazing, human experience. And so I say that to introduce just the experience and the character of the spirit of generosity. So yes, we can like unpack all of these like ways and strategies, but like at the heart of all these is like a spirit of generosity. And like I just really want to like say like any of us can be cultivating that in any moment in time. And it's like the one thing, no, it's not the one thing, but it's something that I kind of have a pet peeve around the like basic permaculture um, values or principles, like the three, like care for people, care for earth, share the surplus. And the share the surplus is the one that kind of irks me. I'm like, well, what about sharing before it's actually surplus? Like kind of like more of that like shirt off your back energy. And so that's something that is a guiding principle for me to live into, to like heal up my scarcity issues and my trust issues. So I just want to like say thank you, Courtney and Brooke, for like really living this gift of generosity and this spirit of generosity. And so, people play with gift economy here too, as a way to like really get into that community, like care for we. And I keep mentioning Paul, one of our founders. He says like, if you take care of and you give to the we and the you, then the I is taken care of. And that's like the other side of the coin. It's not, doesn't have to be like, it's the juxtaposition of taking care of yourself, putting on your own oxygen mask first, which is a great way to do also, but it's just like playing with that. Like, yes, have self-care, and his point is you'll be taken care of if you're really taking care of others and the we, which you're included in. So thanks, Paul, for that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we have some wisdom in our elders around here. Yeah, I was thinking like that sounds very it's like another spin on that Buddhist idea of like there are no selfless acts, right? And the idea of that is like not that all acts are selfish, but that
Yeah.
yeah, we're all the interdependence, like we're all the same. So taking care of one is taking care of the other. Yeah, I want to also add, yeah, it is that culture. I just marvel at it. Like you speak to it, and I'm like the culture of generosity. Like, I mean, you name some of these like formalized forms of like mutual aid that we have in the community, and there's a whole lot of like just organic mutual aid, right? Of seeing a need and meeting a need. Um, but in order, I mean, I'm just going to beat the dead
Mhm.
horse. I love it. In order for that to um, coalesce and actually manifest, that like trust has to be built, right? Um, like I can see the difference, like in me and like my level of comfort and transparency,
Mm.
right? Now compared to when I arrived here 8 years ago, I actually was not transparent really at all. I'd never been taught the value of transparency, didn't know anything about this um, community thing. There were a lot of lessons for me to learn. But yeah, we have to be honest about what our needs are too, in order to be helped, and honest about what we have to help with in order to
Mhm.
help. And that's like edgy for people, right? And that might be financial resources or some other type of resources. And I think that is like an edge that we're like maybe creeping up on here, right? Like just in the community, it's a little bit of a frontier, and we're like flirting with it in different ways. But yeah, the building of trust in order to like let a group of people know what my need is, like that's inherent to the process and the culture that we want to build.
Yes, there's quite a bit that happens. And again, that's all community member inspired and held. Like the organization is not holding that. And that's kind of, by intention to like let the spirit move through us and we show up because that's the life we want. And so there's song circles, there's music jams that are being held weekly right now by a couple that moved here in the past year. Um, Over the years, we've had weekly dances, kind of more of the five rhythms wave. And then at times there was like a Saturday, once a month dance. There's rituals that happen seasonally, at least 8 times a year here. Um, there's yoga that happens weekly. Um,
We have
there's
rituals
NVC. Uh,
of
yeah.
rituals.
Mm-hmm. Yep, seasonal rituals. There's an NVC Sangha, is what they call themselves, like a practice group. Um, and I'm sure there's like all kinds of like, people just getting together for things that I have no idea. There's meditation every morning and every night in our neighbor's Zendo. And so, I live very near it and I hear this gong, this bell that happens 3 minutes before the sit twice a day. That's pretty cool. So yeah, those are some of the things. Yeah, Debbie put Compassion Camp link in the chat, and it's 4 days of opportunities like that of self-reveal and disclosure as much as one's comfortable or desirous, and practicing those interpersonal communication skills as well as intrapersonal, because like you have to sit with like, what am I feeling right now? Um, and anyway, lots of dynamic, beautiful, fun ways to engage the practice and also just live into the experience of that kind of pop-up community for the weekend. Yeah, the Friends of Earthaven, that anyone can be um, a member of, and it's a kind of like a patron program where you get perks, and get to support the mission by either a one-time or a monthly contribution. And Rachel, I don't know if you want to share just kind of like how you have been thinking about and holding the Village Voices, which is one of the gifts through that program, that
Hmm.
relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, through being a friend of Earthaven, like one of the perks that you get at this point in time is a monthly newsletter from us that is intended to be like a little bit more intimate, like getting to know the news of the village, that might not be made public otherwise. And just sharing a little bit more of our lives here with you, like on that deeper level. Um, yeah, and bringing you in closer, like a friend. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, I wanted to give a shout out to one of our ancestors who is a member here and a friend of mine and many, Kim Chi Rylander. And she really gifted me with a new relationship to indebtedness. I was taught, do your best to never be in debt. And, there's wisdom in that. I get what the intention is. And usually it's not in debt to a bank and not in debt to a credit card company and not in debt to a university. And, in these predatory relationships with money and capital. And so, that also strengthened my individualism, my like hyper individualism of like taking good care of myself and my matters. And I still pride myself on that. And it's not something that I want to lose and like throw the baby out the bathwater. But I remember it was some gift exchange. Like I repaired a necklace of hers and it just like went over and over. And how she said it was like, I'm indebted to you now. Awesome. Like forever. And so she just like played with this like mutual indebtedness. And I was like, wow, this is a mind blowing perspective on debt that's
Mhm.
relational and like almost how people might think of like blood sisters or, friendship necklaces, or this is what we did when we were kids at least, or people do, um, commitment rings or bracelets and fasting things that make some level of commitment. And yeah, I just appreciated that she would just really call me in to like be indebted to each other forever. And I feel like that's also this invitation with the land here and this project too. Like, and with that indebtedness is like, it's not mine, it's not ours. Like, it's like this giveaway, this like open source as much as we can while also, taking care of ourselves and maintaining the sustainability of our life energy. And, we still pay for propane and cars and taxes. And so like, just like trying to like find that sweet spot of being in the world and having expenses and, but not being, um, yeah, overly lost and indebted to those structures that we don't have relationships with, but with each other. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like a pattern, that indebtedness, mutual indebtedness is like a pattern of the universe itself, right? Like going back to the original question that you asked at the beginning, and
Mm-hmm.
that was like, how do you see the community mind in nature? And it's like everywhere,
Yeah.
actually. You just have to look close enough to see it. I think like a forest is an easy example of, there's the fungi and the bacteria and the mycelial network in the soil. And it is like for its own glorious survival, but that's also supporting the trees and what the trees are
Mm-hmm.
supporting. And this is the pattern of an ecosystem, right? And like all in scale, that is the pattern of the universe, and how humanity has found itself so disconnected from that. I know I was raised to be a helper and never
Mm-hmm.
to be helped, right? And I heard that maybe in what you were saying,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how what my family ethic was, and how much richness there is in being indebted to someone, or
Mm-hmm.
but then also like, yeah, being helped, that like gift, and the sweetness and the juice and the glue and the connection that comes with it. Like there's such a sadness for me. It's like something to mourn, a gap to mourn, in the hyper individualism of our culture, because like the real rich good stuff of being human is not found in the isolation of independence.
Mm, yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect note to kind of leave, like wrap the bundle of the things that we've been sharing and just say thank you for your time and your presence. Maybe this was your only call, maybe it was one of many. And I just want to make space for you all, like sharing a gratitude, sharing something that's on your heart that you feel like sharing. Yeah, in the, getting to the heart of it, we've got about 5 minutes for all of us. And I think that's plenty of time if we um, just take our turn. So feel free to unmute yourself and just share what's alive, share something you're taking with you that's something that's obviously not to be like held in this like so tight way that it doesn't be incorporated into your life, but in that like reciprocity that we were just talking about, like things move through us.
Thank you. And if that spoke to you, I want to say that's from the book Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown. And there are so many beautiful lessons about community in there. Like what she says about herself is that she's a scholar of belonging. And I think anyone trying to live in community could benefit from that book. So you might want to check it out.
Thank you so much. And just again, this was our first experiment of this way of engaging with the experiment between us and also with you all. And so curious, just like, is an hour and a half conversation in this format good? Would you like something else? Like anything you want, like please, like let us know. We're really trying to like meet you all where it works for you um, in ways that we have capacity for. So we'll send a feedback form out. There is maybe, yeah, there's a link in the chat also to the feedback form if you want to grab it there. Um, and if you do, or yeah, if you fill it out, there's a little gift for you to deepen in a personal practice for this winter, if that would feel yummy as an additional bonus. But for now, thank you so much. Blessings.